Today, around 6,000 Dunnes Stores workers are on strike at 109 locations across the island, fighting for very basic improvements in their standard of living with the trade union mandate. In summary, longer and more stable hours, decent pay, and recognition of their union. Upon inspection, it is apparent that Dunnes Stores is a company with ruthless bosses, not content even with the usual level of exploitation of workers in the society, with an often bullying management and a widely precarious workforce. Earlier today, one of our reporters visited 3 Dunnes Stores pickets to hear the perspective of some of the striking workers. The interviewed workers did not want to be photographed or have their voices recorded, partially from nervousness, but importantly because they didn't want to further prejudice the Dunnes management against them for fear of repercussions. This says a lot in of itself. So the interviews have been reconstructed from the interviewed workers' collective response. When I reached Dunnes at Nuckgrove Shopping Centre, the first thing I saw was a group of Lloyd's pharmacy workers showing their support for the strikers. Lots of people were walking up to sign their petition. About 30 workers were striking and 4 crossing the picket. The management had told them that they were only allowed to have 4 on a picket at a time, but the workers defied this and put 6 on the picket instead. I asked why they were on strike today. They said that many workers are on flexi contracts of only 15 hours over 5 days, so they can't even avail of social welfare. Because of this unreliability and low pay, they can't get mortgages or cars or things like that. They said some of them have children, it's hard to make ends meet. Also, they are striking because Dunnes Stores will not recognise their union. New people hired by Dunnes Stores can't get the secure contracts from before October 1994. Some strikers I talked to said that despite being on fixed contracts with much better hours themselves, and despite not wanting to change their own contracts, they are striking to support their colleagues. I asked them why it's important to show solidarity for their colleagues if these issues don't directly affect them. They said they have to stick together because they work together and have to stay united, and that the hardship of their fellow workers isn't acceptable and has to end. Next was Dunnes Stores at the Beacon Shopping Centre in Sandyford. Before being interviewed, the picketing workers said we had to stand well away from the shop, as the Dunnes management had said they would call the Gardaí for trespassing if they stood too close to the shop. I asked why they were striking. They said it was for greater job security, stable hours, better pay, decent working conditions, and for Dunnes Stores to recognise mandate trade union. Asked about the effect of unstable hours in their lives, they said, "It's not a normal life. People need that stability, even if it's not full-time, because they're not only fighting for full-time, but just hours that are stable in general, because it causes people stress." They said, even if your hours are 40, but on paper they're 15, a bank won't give you a loan because it's too risky. As an aside, it's worth remembering Dunnes Stores the next time you hear someone say we don't need unions anymore. Dunnes won't let workers collectively bargain through mandate, so workers have to bargain with Dunnes individually. This greatly reduces the power of workers and hence their standard of living. I asked one worker on longer hours why they should show support for their colleagues. They said, "These are my friends, my colleagues, I have to support them. And it's not just ours, but the way we're treated. There have been many situations where people have been bullied, and the head office haven't properly dealt with it. They're happy just to keep people quiet." Asked about intimidation in general, they said the management had taken people aside individually and talked to them. They said the management know what to say to people to scare them away from striking. For example, one person had a personal chat with the manager who said that, quote, "We know you have a mortgage and you know this might be affected." Many of the notorious, quote, communication meetings were held where workers were dissuaded from striking. The majority of workers here had crossed the picket, which the striking workers said wasn't fair. But they said that, quote, "People are complaining all the time, and to be honest, every day you hear someone say, 'I hate this job.'" I asked that since many of them are migrants, if that makes working at Dunnes or striking more difficult. They said that they are, quote, expected to do more and do it faster because we're not from here, and you can feel it on your back. They said, quote, "We have nothing to lose. We don't want to make Ireland another Poland with similar problems. This is like the Chinese model of employment." They said, "You should care about your future and the future of your kids. You should make society progress and not downgrade." Finally, I visited Dunnes Stores in Stillorgan. The first thing I saw was a shopper giving 2 boxes of chocolates to picketing workers. I asked workers, why strike? They said it was to gain job security. Someone could be working 10 years with relatively good hours in a flexi contract, but they can still get their hours cut to 15 at the drop of a hat. They said that none of them were hugely affected by contract instability, but a new manager could cut their hours at any time. They said it's too much power for the managers to have. If they don't like you, they can cut your hours or hire someone cheaper. Out of about 10 workers, half were striking and half crossed the picket. The ones crossing the picket were mostly only at Dunn's to work for a short amount of time and weren't in the union. Many were told that, quote, there might be job losses if there's a strike. This kind of veiled threat has been widely reported from the Dunn's management. I asked about intimidation and misinformation. They said several communication meetings were held where the management spread misinformation. An example was the management saying that there were 15,000 staff in total, implying the union is a minority, when in reality there are more like 10,000, so the 6,000 striking workers are actually the majority. They said the management were, quote, gently threatening people in an informal capacity. A couple of days before the strike, the workers had been told that the Gardaí would be called if, quote, there was any trouble. But they said that at this store they are not treated too badly overall, in comparison to what they hear from bigger stores. But when it comes to a strike, things really change. They also said that depending on the manager, there's been trouble sometimes. I asked if they'd been showed much solidarity. They said the Tesco workers in the same shopping centre were unionised with mandate and were wearing their badges, which the Dunn's workers are not actually allowed to do. They said lots of solidarity had been shown from people giving supportive words to customers bringing them tea, coffee and other gifts. I asked if they were more likely to support other workers, not just Dunn's workers, because of their participation in this strike. They thought about it for a few seconds and answered yes. Really, the striking Dunnes Stores workers are struggling for the bare acceptable minimum in a society which considers itself in any way free. But while the abject exploitation of Dunnes Stores makes many of their competitors look good in comparison, they are no angels either, and our ambitions mustn't stop there. The good lives we all want are simply not possible for the vast majority under this economic and political system. This is Ferdy O'Brien reporting for the Solidarity Times. If you want to free the media, be the media.